Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of GRE Bites. My name is Davis. I'm an educator with over 10 years of experience.
And I'm Orion, the founder of StellarGRE.
We're here to bring you your weekly bite-sized episode on everything GRE prep, grad school admissions. For more information, you can always check us out, StellarGRE.com. Okay, so we had an episode recently where we did zoom out, but that was more about the time requirements for preparation. I want to zoom out even more this time.
Wow, what is Zoom?
And just really look at kind of the personal preparation that anyone would have to make meaningful change in their life, whether it's improving their score in the context of this show in the GRE or in any other realm. So what does it take? Because you're a psychologist trained as well as a successful GRE tutor and business owner. So what are the prerequisites for making meaningful progress in any domain of pursuit?
Yeah, great question, because people come to me in the context of GRE tutoring because they want to get better at the GRE. They want to improve their score. It's not a faith-based exercise. They have a concrete objective. They want to see that score go up over time. They want to make progress. That's basically what they're paying me for. It's very outcome dependent.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And the fact of the matter is that progress requires extraordinary effort. Progress requires extraordinary effort on the GRE and in all domains of life. And this is kind of how I break it down. In physics, we have this concept called entropy. You know what entropy is, right, Davis?
To put it, most times it's defined, there's a lot of talk about this, but most times it's defined as a growing level of disorder.
Within a closed system, absolutely.
Disorder increases.
One way to think about it is if you just sealed off a room in your house for a month and came back to it, it would be dusty. The picture frames would start to hang crooked on the wall. I mean, disorder would increase over time if you did nothing. Absolutely. So, and this is just baked into the fabric of reality. This is an inescapable aspect of the universe, right? So what this means is that if you do nothing, things get worse.
And so in the context of the GRE, that is, if I took the GRE now and did nothing for the next 10 years and took it in 10 years from now or a year from now, I would have a worse score.
Most likely.
If I did no kind of education or preparatory or efforts.
Yeah. I think what might be more common in the context of the GRE is a student does maybe a month of prep, but then something comes up and he or she spends 3 weeks, 4 weeks away from the test.
Doing nothing and then tries to go.
Okay. Yeah, and in that timeline, all of those gains, or the vast majority of those gains, will have decayed. Especially on the quant, because there are certain things you'll have to learn from on the quantitative side of things, like the area of a trapezoid. It's like, why would you ever need to know the area of a trapezoid in your everyday life? It's something that is really only useful for this test in the context of adult life. So if you don't reinforce those gains continuously, they degrade very, very quickly. Within a matter of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, they're gone. So if you do nothing, things get worse. If you don't attend to your health, if you don't exercise, you don't get more healthy, you get less healthy. You can generalize this across the board.
Especially after you turn 35.
Yeah, it's just...
just scientifically, muscle mass starts to drop off.
That's true. We can also be in the best shape of our lives as well.
Absolutely, but it does take not only a steady effort, but if you want to improve fitness, you have to increase your effort.
Oh, well, yeah, we're getting to that. Yeah, if you do nothing, things get worse.
Yes.
Now, if you do something, things don't get better. Why? Because of entropy. If you do nothing, things get worse. If you do something, you just counteract the inevitable increase in disorder and decay that's baked into the universe. Doing a little bit of exercise, like if you want to lose weight, running once a week, you're probably not going to see any change in your weight. Is it better than doing no running whatsoever? Yes, because you do no running whatsoever, you probably gain even more. So the point is that just ordinary effort is required to maintain the status quo. But that might not be good enough. Let's say you actually want to lose weight. You want to build muscle. You want to improve your GRE score. You want to make more money. You want to build a business. You have this goal. You want a positive have a positive growth-oriented objective,
Mm-hmm.
ordinary effort is not going to be sufficient. In those cases, extraordinary effort is required.
So let me ask a question here. In the context of the GRE, you take a diagnostic test up front. You have a baseline and you have a target goal you want to get to. You are prepping for a month, and you do a follow-up practice exam, and you're not reaching your goal. If you continue at the same level of effort, you're not necessarily going to see future gains. You have to increase the level of aggression, so to speak, on your study habits.
I would think so. Isn't that reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not yet getting the results that you want, you have to do something different. Now, oftentimes that means devoting more time and energy to whatever you want to improve at. Like you need repetition in order to develop any kind of skill, whether it's touch typing or a martial art. You have to do it repeatedly. And we've talked about this, that there's kind of this mystery in repetition where it's a one-way street. If you do something over and over again, you can't get worse at it. You can only get better at it. So you do have to put in the reps in order to like ingrain it in your muscle memory, to really consolidate the process. And success in the GRE is really not about learning individual concrete facts. It's about learning a way of approaching the test. It's a process. And you have to practice that process over and over again on problem sets in order to integrate it so thoroughly that when the pressure's on and you're actually taking the test for real, you can rely on that training for sure. That said, sometimes you also have to change how you're doing it. So some students, they get bogged down on, or they get stuck on, I just need to spend more time doing the same thing. And that might not necessarily be the right approach.
That makes a lot of sense. In to bring in another metaphor, we've got like the exercise, we've got the GRE, but then you've had another metaphor in previous episodes where you've said strike while the iron's hot. And if you're trying to get, your piece of metal hot enough so you can actually do something, change its shape, hone it, make something useful out of it. If you just stick it in the same fire for longer, it's not gonna get hotter than that fire. You have to increase the temperature of the fire in order to get the metal up there.
That's one way, for sure. You got to increase temperature of the fire. Also, if you strike repeatedly with greater pressure, you'll increase the internal temperature of whatever you're hitting, right? Not as fast as putting it in the fire, of course.
Not as fast as getting a nice forge going, but
Yeah,
that's okay.
for sure. But I think your point is valid, which is you have to increase the pressure, the temperature, the intensity, whatever kind of metaphor you want to use, if you want to move in the direction of like growing your edge. If we're going to stick with the metaphor of forging, it's like the metal needs to be warm enough to be malleable so that we can sharpen it, so we can create that edge, right? Otherwise, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah, and if you're just hammering with only, half effort and not making a real change to the shape, like you either need to up how hard you're hitting it.
And sometimes what you have to up is learning a better way, like a better technique.
Get a bigger hammer
Or, you learn how to, I don't know, I'm kind of out of my depth with the metallurgy metaphors, but like you learn a different technique for hammering,
Right.
Maybe the technique that you've learned is it's too muscle intensive and so you get exhausted too quickly and so you can't,
right.
you
Let
can't.
the hammer do the work.
Yeah. So maybe it's not just a question of, I just need to hit harder and longer. Maybe you also need to change how you're hitting. You change your approach. And that's kind of what I do in test prep, which is like teaching students how to approach the test or specific questions in radically different ways. And that's really important because you shouldn't have to like quit your job, leave your relationship and move to a monastery in order to prepare for the test. I mean, I sometimes talk to people who are like, I don't get it, or I'm studying 8 hours a day. Like I took a month off from my job. It's all I do is GRE prep and I'm just not getting the gains that I want.
Right.
I mean, that is, that person is definitely demonstrating commitment to the path. This person really wants it. But we also want to work smarter a little bit more smarts is better than a little bit more effort. Let's put it that way.
The extraordinary and extraordinary effort doesn't necessarily mean just do your normal thing, just more of it. That doesn't mean extraordinary. Sometimes extraordinary means
not necessarily
change the way you're doing it.
Because you might be just getting better and better at doing the wrong thing.
Right.
So there's both. You have to kind of learn the most efficient and effective way of doing something and then repeating that over and over again.
Yeah.
If you don't learn the most efficient or effective path, you'll only go so far, and you might even get burned out by applying significant effort on that strategy, on that approach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's the takeaway that you want people to hear? So progress takes extraordinary effort. Extraordinary effort is not just more of the same thing, but it's really diving into to examining what's the most efficient way, what's the most practical way, how am I going to really make these progress gains, and then concentrating your efforts on that over a period of time. And then the big thing that you also said at the beginning was not to, don't, like, if you do that for a time and you see progress, make sure that you take that momentum straight into the end goal of taking the test. Don't take a couple months off and it all goes away.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary.
Okay.
Great.
Well, I hope that helps everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another bite-sized episode. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss, please let us know, StellarGRE@gmail.com. And as always, for all things GRE prep and grad school consulting, check out StellarGRE.com.
Thanks for listening.